Lithuania, a land of forests and lakes, where ancient history meets a resilient national identity. Since antiquity, this land has been a crossroads of cultures and languages, from post-Ice Age hunter-gatherers to a grand duchy transcending ethnicities and religions, and later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which illuminated Eastern Europe with the light of the Renaissance and tolerance. Throughout the centuries, Lithuania resisted invaders and occupations, preserving its language and identity amidst the storms of history. In the 20th century, it emerged as an independent nation, defying adversity and continuing its journey of development into the modern era, safeguarding its rich cultural heritage and unwavering national spirit. Welcome to this new video in our series on the history of European countries. The first humans arrived in what is now Lithuania after the glaciers retreated at the end of the last ice age, around the 10th millennium BC. They came from two main directions: the Jutland Peninsula to the north and present-day Poland to the south. They were nomadic hunter-gatherers, relying on hunting wild animals and gathering fruits, constantly moving without establishing permanent settlements in a harsh environment, still recovering from the grip of the ice. As the climate improved and forests expanded during the following millennia, lifestyles gradually changed. Nomadism decreased, more settled communities emerged, and animal husbandry began. However, agriculture remained delayed until the 3rd millennium BC due to the difficult terrain, cold climate, and lack of resources suitable for early farming. At this stage, the Baltic tribes, including the Lithuanians and Latvians, emerged, preserving their language and pagan culture for centuries. Despite the absence of direct political ties with the Roman Empire, trade relations flourished, and the region began to be mentioned in classical sources. Lithuania's geographical and cultural isolation contributed to the preservation of its language, which is now considered one of the most ancient Indo-European languages. By the late 12th century, a well-organized Lithuanian military force had emerged, relying on raids and alliances, and this accelerated the unification of the tribes. The first written mention of Lithuania as an independent political entity dates back to 1009. With the growing threat of the Teutonic Knights in the Baltic Sea, the tribes found themselves compelled to unite under a strong leader. Mindaugas emerged, successfully unifying the Lithuanian lands, converting to Christianity, and being crowned king in 1253, thus establishing the only Lithuanian kingdom in history. However, his assassination in 1263 plunged the country into a period of turmoil and internal conflict. However, Lithuania regained its footing and embarked on a period of significant expansion during the 13th and 14th centuries, particularly under Gediminas, who combined military strength with diplomatic acumen. He repelled the Teutonic Knights' attacks and strengthened relations with Europe, laying the solid foundations for the Grand Duchy of Lithuania as a prominent regional power in Eastern Europe. Early attempts to Christianize Lithuania, beginning with Mindaugas, failed. His conversion was more political than doctrinal, and after his assassination the country reverted to its old paganism. For centuries, Lithuania remained a staunch pagan island in a hostile Christian sea, under constant pressure from the Teutonic Knights, who used preaching by the sword as a pretext for continuous wars of extermination and expansion. But this same pressure tempered Lithuania, transforming it into a resilient military power situated on the border between the Catholic and Orthodox worlds. In the 14th century, with the collapse of Kievan Rus', Lithuania exploited the political vacuum and embarked on a remarkable expansion across the forests and steppes, bringing vast Ruthenia from Belarus and Ukraine to the borders of present-day Russia under its influence. This was achieved not through forced conversion, but through protection, alliances, and astute administration. Thus arose a multi-ethnic and multi-religious state, sometimes governed by force, sometimes by pragmatism. Gediminas led this rise with the mindset of a statesman, not merely a military commander. He forged alliances, corresponded with European cities, and opened his kingdom to merchants and artisans, while simultaneously countering the Teutonic Knights with raids that halted their advance. Lithuania relied on educated Ruthenia elites in administration, law and writing, thereby strengthening its institutions, fostering a flourishing bureaucracy and transforming diversity into a source of strength, not weakness. After his death, his two sons, Algirdas and Kęstutis, ruled in a precarious balance. Algirdas pushed eastward toward Moscow, expanding influence and containing the Slavic princes, while Kęstutis stood as a bulwark in the west, absorbing and repelling Teutonic attacks. However, the division between the two fronts sowed the seeds of internal conflict. Tensions reached their peak with the rise of Jogaila, who entered into secret negotiations with the Teutons to secure his throne. This sparked a civil war that ended with Kęstutis' mysterious death. Jogaila then chose to ally with Poland, converted to Catholicism, and was crowned king in 1386, officially Christianizing Lithuania, a transformation that deprived the Teutons of their pretext for missionary wars and shifted the balance of power in the region. Following the settlement of 1392, the Lithuanian entity reached its zenith under Vytautas, who reorganized the state, strengthened centralization, expanded influence eastward and southward, and steadfastly confronted the Teutons and Mongols. However, the defeat at Vorskla in 1399 served as a reminder of the limits of power, prompting the consolidation of union with Poland as a strategic imperative. Thus, Lithuania emerged from a turbulent century as a major multi-ethnic state, officially Christianized after the last Christianization in Europe, with more robust institutions and a nascent identity, an identity forged in wars, alliances, and a rare ability to survive between the hammer of empires and the anvil of history. Between 1401 and 1408, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania waged complex campaigns against Moscow and its allies, including those at Smolensk, Pskov, and Novgorod, culminating in a balance of power established at the Ugra River in 1408 without a decisive battle. Immediately afterward, a decisive confrontation with the Teutonic Knights erupted, supported by the Polish-Lithuanian alliance. This culminated in the crushing victory at the Battle of Grunwald, 1410, which ended the historical threat posed by the Knights. Samogita was later permanently restored under the Treaty of Milnov, 1422. The Horudwo Union, 1413, established a quasi-equal partnership between Lithuania and Poland, characterized by elite rapprochement and the granting of privileges to Lithuanian Catholic nobility. Under Vytautas, the state reached its zenith. Administrative reforms, calculated religious tolerance, attempts to influence the Orthodox Church, and an expansion of influence eastward, even to the nominal submission of the Crimean Khanate. His coronation as king in 1429 failed, but his legend was cemented. After his death, 1430, unrest returned, but the Jagiellonian dynasty maintained the personal union between the two states. From the late 15th century, Lithuania faced pressure from the Grand Duchy of Moscow, leading to a series of wars that resulted in significant territorial losses, 1503, and the fall of Smolensk, 1514, despite the subsequent victory at Orsha. In the mid-16th century, With the growing Russian threat and the Livonian Wars, dependence on Poland deepened, culminating in the Union of Lublin, 1569. This union created a unified political entity with a common government, while Lithuania retained its essential institutions. Within this framework, Lithuania experienced a cultural and legal renaissance, influenced by the Renaissance and the Reformation, and entered the Commonwealth as a major power, albeit with incomplete reforms that would later reveal its limitations. After the mid-16th century, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania entered a period of intellectual and cultural flourishing, a kind of late but profound renaissance. Polish dominated literary and elite production, while Latin thrived as the language of science, philosophy and law. Many educated Lithuanians returned from universities in Italy and Germany, bringing with them the ideas of European humanism. This was reflected in architecture. The Italian style was introduced to the cities, and Vilnius and other cities were transformed with new palaces, squares, and churches. It was in this climate that the first printed book appeared, heralding Lithuania's entry into the age of the printed word. At the same time, written Lithuanian began to struggle amidst this linguistic diversity. The West, particularly Samogitia and East Prussia, Lesser Lithuania, was its most important supporter, with Lutherans playing a crucial role in preserving local languages. A pivotal moment came in 1547 with the printing of the Catechism, which laid the foundation for standardizing the language and protecting it from assimilation. The year 1569 marked a turning point with the ratification of the Union of Lublin, which established a new state, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The union was complex and multifaceted. It shared a common foreign policy and currency, a single elected monarch, but with separate armies, independent treasuries, and the continued application of Lithuanian law. To reinforce judicial independence, the Supreme Lithuanian Court was established in 1581. Despite the growing Polish influence among the nobility, particularly linguistically and culturally, Lithuanian identity did not disappear, and the 1588 law, written in Divan Slavonic, remained a symbol of the state's continuity. This period was characterized by a level of tolerance rarely seen in Europe. The Warsaw Pact of 1573 enshrined the principle of coexistence between Catholics, Orthodox Christians and Protestants, and established freedom of religion as a legal principle. But the winds of the Counter-Reformation later shifted the balance, tipping the scales in favor of Catholicism. A new religious and political entity emerged, the Union of Brest Churches, 1596, which combined Eastern rites with nominal allegiance to Rome. Centuries later, amidst the divisions, Tsarist Russia would intervene to support orthodoxy, forcibly reshaping the religious landscape. Vilnius emerged as a border city between two worlds, the Catholic West and the Orthodox East. A meeting point of religions and cultures, it was nicknamed the Jerusalem of the North due to its Jewish heritage. Its university and Baroque school flourished, and its thinkers contributed to law, philosophy and literature. Reformist aspirations culminated in the Constitution of May 3, 1791, one of the first written constitutions in Europe, a final attempt to save the state by modernizing governance and curbing the chaos of privileges. However, reality proved harsher. Successive wars, from the Swedish Flood to the Northern Wars, had ravaged the country, and epidemics and famines decimated a vast proportion of the population, while Russian influence within the Commonwealth's internal politics grew. With the Golden Liberty system and the veto power incapable of reform, The situation culminated in the partitions of 1772-1795. The Commonwealth collapsed, and over 90% of Lithuania fell under Russian rule, ushering in a long period of statelessness, but one that also gave rise to modern Lithuanian nationalism, which would later reclaim its name and history. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Russian Empire sought to co-opt the local elite through culture and education. Tsar Alexander I transformed the Jesuit Academy into the Imperial University of Vilnius, 1803, which became a major centre of learning and where the poet Adam Mickiewicz later studied. However, hopes for recognition of Lithuania's distinctiveness were dashed, especially after the failed uprisings of 1830-1831 and 1863-1864. The Tsarist authorities intensified repression, closed the university, and imposed a policy of Russification, despite the abolition of serfdom in 1861. In parallel, a Lithuanian national revival crystallized on the foundations of language and history. Thinkers like Simonas Daukantas promoted the idea of a return to pre-Comintau's heritage, and the value of the Lithuanian language was rediscovered as being close to its Indo-European roots. After the January uprising of 1864, the rift with Polish culture widened, and language became the defining characteristic of modern identity. Nationalists countered the ban on printing in the Latin alphabet by smuggling books from East Prussia until the ban was lifted in the late 19th century, unifying the written language. Jonas Jablonski's Grammar, 1901. The more affluent peasantry championed the language while emigration accelerated, reaching approximately 20% of the population between 1867 and 1914. Politically, the Greater Vilnius Seimas, 1905, demanded autonomy, securing limited linguistic and educational concessions. During World War I, Germany occupied the country, 1915, and allowed the Vilnius Congress, 1917. The Congress elected the Lithuanian Council, which declared independence on February 16, 1918, under the leadership of Jonas Pasanavičius. However, the path was fraught with difficulties. The German withdrawal was followed by the Soviet advance, and then clashes with Poland around Vilnius. Between late 1918 and 1919, Lithuania fought a war of independence against the Soviets and Poland, temporarily relocating its capital to Kaunas. This marked the beginning of the nation-building process amidst a complex territorial conflict. Between 1919 and 1922, the Lithuanian army, under General Sylvester Zhukowski, concluded the wars of independence against Soviet and Western Russian forces. The country then began to focus on its internal affairs, culminating in the election of a constituent assembly in April 1920, the adoption of a provisional constitution, and the signing of a peace treaty with the Soviet Union that recognized Lithuania's independence and its claims to Vilnius. Despite ongoing conflicts with Poland and the annexation of Vilnius in 1922, Lithuania continued to develop its institutions, implement agrarian reforms, expand education, and elect a parliament. The Klaipėda region, a significant industrial port, was annexed in 1924. In the mid-1920s and 1930s, Lithuania experienced relative stability with the advancement of economic and social reforms. However, it entered a period of authoritarian rule following the December 1926 coup led by Antanas Matūna and Augustin Voldemir. Presidential powers expanded, and the Smetona Party, the Lithuanian National Union, grew in strength. Relations with Nazi Germany deteriorated, and the first Communist Party elections were held in 1936. Presidential powers were constitutionally strengthened in 1938, before Polish and German pressure led to the Klaipėda annexation crisis in 1939. With the outbreak of World War II, the Soviet Union imposed control over Lithuania in October 1939, establishing a puppet government and transforming the country into a socialist republic in August 1940. This involved nationalizing land and banks and raising taxes, causing a collapse in living standards, the deportation of tens of thousands to Siberia, and the continuation of armed resistance. In June 1941, Nazi Germany occupied Lithuania, establishing the Reich Commissariat in Ostland. Local forces were used for policing and the Holocaust, leading to the formation of a resistance movement against both the Germans and the Soviets. After the war, the Red Army reoccupied the country in 1944 and re-established the Lithuanian Socialist Republic. This period saw the mass deportation of elites, intellectuals and Catholic priests, resulting in the loss of approximately 780,000 lives between 1940 and 1954. While the Lithuanian language was standardized and national culture developed under the constraints of repression, armed resistance continued until the mid-1950s. During this time, the country underwent a reorganization of its education system and universities, preserving elements of its national revival. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Lithuanian independence movement gained momentum from the mid-1980s, drawing on a long legacy of nationalism, language, culture, and national identity. In March 1990, Lithuania declared its independence following free parliamentary elections, becoming the first of the Baltic republics to formally declare independence. This occurred amid sporadic resistance from Soviet forces, who attempted to suppress the national movement. However, the determination of the Lithuanian people and their intense peaceful struggle prevailed until January 1991, with some bloody confrontations resulting in martyrs who were later honoured and remembered nationally. By September 1991, Lithuania had gained widespread international recognition, ushering in a new era of stability and sovereignty. The country joined the United Nations, the European Union, the World Trade Organization, and NATO, steps that solidified its position on the international stage as a sovereign democracy. Lithuania embarked on a series of comprehensive economic and political reforms. A large-scale privatization program was implemented, and a new national currency was introduced, pegged to the dollar and the euro, while the financial and banking infrastructure was strengthened. Military and civilian institutions were restructured according to modern standards, and sophisticated legal and administrative structures were established in line with European and international standards, while preserving national identity and cultural traditions. The country experienced significant development in education and scientific research, with an expanded network of universities and technical institutes adopting national curricula that integrate Lithuanian heritage with modern global skills. Arts and culture also flourished, from literature and theatre to music and visual arts, with the state supporting initiatives to preserve national heritage and promote cultural identity internationally. In the following decades, Lithuania continued to strengthen its democratic institutions with free and periodic elections, an independent judiciary, and guaranteed press freedom. Economic and trade relations with Europe and America expanded, and the technology and innovation sector grew, making Lithuania a regional hub for advanced technology and services. By 2026, Lithuania had become a model of resilience and a successful transition from an occupied state to a modern democratic nation, combining the preservation of its historical and cultural heritage with openness to the global economy and European standards. The country remained committed to its national identity, strong in its civic institutions, economically prosperous, and an active player in regional and international politics, maintaining a balance between its historical legacy and modern progress. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.